Good evening and welcome to Primetime Lawmakers for April 14, 2011, the 40th and final legislative day of the 2011 session of the Georgia General Assembly. It's sine die. As you can see, the House and Senate are taking a break this hour, but they haven't gone away. They'll be back to work into the evening. Adjournment is expected sometime before midnight. I'm Scott Slade. And coming up in tonight's program, the state Senate has passed illegal immigration reform again, this time with House provisions that restore teeth to the measure. The Senate gives final passage to the health care compact. If approved by Congress, the bill will give Georgia the ability to enter into health care agreements with other states. We conclude our leadership interview series with Representative Donna Sheldon talking about those big transportation referendum packages, and Nwandi is talking about how we will pay for them. And Tom Crawford of the Georgia Report will be joining Nwandi and me live from the Capitol for analysis of this final day of the 2011 session. All that is coming up tonight on Primetime Lawmakers, but our top stories first. Immigration reform, one of the last issues debated by the General Assembly on this final day of the session. Nwandi Lawson is live at the Capitol with the late developments on House Bill 87. Good evening, Nwandi.
Well, good evening, Scott. At this hour right outside the Capitol, opponents of that sweeping immigration reform bill are rallying on the steps of the Capitol. They're vowing to kill the measure today. And about 90 minutes ago, the Senate agreed to House changes to HB 87 and made some of its own. Unlike the version passed by the Senate on Monday, the bill now includes the provision requiring private companies with 10 or more employees to use the federal E-Verify program for all full-time workers, those who work at least 35 hours per week. The House also stripped a Senate amendment that would have allowed police to check immigration status only for felony arrests, and the bill also now places the Attorney General's office over the affidavit process. Today's debate pitted those who say the bill will drive business and tourism from the state against those who say that measure is targeting the wrong groups.
To make an argument that it may be good or bad for business is not an argument at all. Because if you truly believe that, should we stop prosecuting DUIs? Surely it harms the bars and the liquor stores when we tell people they can't drink and drive. That is not an answer. Will we not prosecute people who commit armed robbery next? That might cause problems with the industry that's trying to put up camera systems or security guards. That is not the right answer, folks.
You can talk all you want to about the illegal aliens and what we're going to do, but until you approach the problem of the business of documenting these folks illegally, stealing Social Security numbers, providing false documents, that business is the biggest one of the biggest illegal businesses in the country right now. And until you punish those folks with a long prison term, you're not really doing anything to stop them from continuing to furnish people who jump the stream to feed their kids. Now, that's the reason I can't support this particular motion, because I don't think it's tough enough. I think this is as tough as you can get if you want to get to the folks that are really breaking the law and are providing documents so that illegal aliens can come here.
And the Senate sent that immigration bill back to the House with its amendments. That vote was 37-19. The bill raised some controversy in the House earlier today when House Speaker David Ralston demanded that anti-HB 87 materials be removed from the chamber.
It is the view of the chair that it is a violation of at least one and possibly three rules of this House for someone to put material on the desk of members that suggests that a member of this body is lying. Take a very dim view of that, and I would take that view regardless of what party or whoever the member might be. So I'm about to give this document, and it's going to go outside, and the pages will be instructed to immediately remove that document from the desk of the members of this body.
The Senate today gave final passage to a measure allowing the state to enter into interstate health care compacts with its neighboring states that do not want to participate in the federal health care program.
Our president has stated that he is open to a discussion about states operating their own health care if they can demonstrate the ability to do so in a manner, of course, satisfactory to his liking. But having said that, there's a discussion about this, and this is a request to do just that.
But is it not also true that as a matter of practicality, that it's not likely that a party that's being sued by another party on the same issue is going to in turn agree?
Senator, I would say that in my experience, I have seen parties agree to many things that I didn't think they'd agree to beforehand. But I will also add that this process is likely to take time. It'll take member states. Arizona's consider it, Montana's consider it, Tennessee's consider it. Many other states are considering this action. Once they've done that, they'll be responsible to go to their congressional delegation and start the process in Washington, D.C. By the time that gets there, we may not be in litigation any longer, and we may have different parties at play making those decisions.
A party line vote of 34-17 gave that interstate health care compact its final passage, sending it to the governor's office. Now, one of the final orders of business last night was passage of a measure allowing local governments to ask voters whether retail sales of alcohol should be allowed on Sundays. Representative Roger Williams assured the House that Senate Bill 10 does not broaden the sale of liquor.
It can't be acted upon unless the sale of alcohol is now legal. And it can't be used to legalize the sale of alcohol where sales are not now legal. There's two conditions in the bill. One is the sale of beer and wine. If it's legal, then by local referendum, you can call for a referendum to vote to call for the sale of just beer and wine. The other part of the bill is if it's legal to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits, the referendum then would call for both the sale of beer, wine, and distilled spirits.
Representative Williams drew applause after presenting the bill,
We do
but there
have
were
members who
groans
want to speak
before
on the
others
bill.
came to speak on the measure. Although Williams characterizes it as a local control bill, Representative Lynn Walker, who is a minister, said passage of SB 10 means Sunday will never be the same, regardless of where you live.
Make no mistake about this. The quality of life in your County A, by virtue of not voting for this measure, will be greatly affected by the counties that surround you. No county is an island in the state of Georgia. As far as I know, there's not a chain link fence that separates me from Oconee County or Newton County or Rockdale County or Gwinnett County. What happens in Gwinnett County, what happens in Rockdale County, what happens in Oconee County is going to directly affect me in Walton County. And the same thing is true of your county.
And a vote of 127-44 sends SB 10 to the governor's office. Final passage today of the governor's proposal to create a special counsel on justice reform. That's to determine whether the state's prison population might be reduced. SB 160 also got final passage. That allows public utilities to contribute to political campaigns. SB 95, which originally allowed background checks on police officers, passed the General Assembly today as the Runaway Youth Protection Act, allowing certain professionals to harbor youth runaways without fear of prosecution. HB 186 also makes its way to the governor's office with money to allow high school students to be dually enrolled in their home school and a technical school or college or university. SB 163, which compels those who campaign against certain candidates to reveal the source of their funding, also receiving final passage. And South Georgia hunters will have that distance restriction lifted when they bait prey, with final passage there, pending the governor's signature on HB 277. There's also been final passage of the bill creating the Martin Luther King Jr. Advisory Council, and final passage about an hour ago of a measure to continue the fuel tax exemption for Delta Airlines. By a vote of 40-7, the Senate decided to approve HB 322, but not before debate about whether the incentive is a good investment. Senator Don Balfour was questioned about the over 1,000 Delta employees that have been laid off.
I can tell you that Delta Airlines in the last 2 years has increased its payroll in the state of Georgia $150 million.
How many jobs did that do? I mean, how many?
$150 million?
I hear you dollars. I'm saying 1,500 employees laid off and bonuses.
No, I'm saying.
Can you speak to me about that?
Okay.
That's the question.
They cumulatively have increased payroll in Georgia $150 million. Now, did they lay some employees off? Yes. Did they add employees? Yes. They increased their payroll. If we came down here for one thing, folks, this year, if we came down here for one thing, listen to me for 1 minute. We came down here for one thing, we came down here for one thing. What was it? Jobs. $150 million. Name another industry in the state of Georgia that added $150 million in jobs in the last year.
Again, HB 322 has received final passage. Still hanging in the balance this evening, a decision about whether the state will move to zero-based budgeting, with the House and Senate trading views about whether the House and Senate budget offices should be independent of one another. House Speaker David Ralston weighed in when the House approved its version of SB 33 last night.
Questions?
Okay, I'll take a couple.
I have a question.
I'll definitely take that one, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Didn't we pass a bill like this earlier in the session?
Mr. Speaker, we passed this exact bill.
Exact
bill down to the language. We have replaced Senate Bill 33 with the language of House Bill 33.
Okay, and does this bill save the taxpayers of Georgia almost $1 million?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. If we do a joint legislative budget office, we are estimating that it'll save the Georgia taxpayers $1 million per year.
A lot of money right now, isn't it, Representative?
Yes, it is.
Today, Representative Bobby Franklin urged passage of zero-based budgeting no matter how the budget office is organized.
Back in January, we had an opportunity with one simple vote to enact zero-based budgeting. We missed that, and here we are at sine die, and the governor still does not have a bill from this year dealing with zero-based budgeting because we've been playing around with the Senate and whether or not they should have their own budget office. While that might save the taxpayers some money, please, let's don't mess with a chance to have zero-based budgeting.
And that measure is currently in the Senate. In other news, the House earlier rejected a Senate attempt to amend a bill creating a study commission to research the quality basic education funding formula. Representative Brooks Coleman explained that a measure allowing charter school students to participate in extracurricular activities at their local traditional public school would not be allowed, but that the House was also adding to House Bill 192.
The middle school incentive grant says you must be 6, 7, and 8 to receive state money. This bill simply says that does not have to be that way. You can be organized 4 through 7, 5 through 8, whatever. The organization doesn't matter. You can still get your incentive grant money.
And at about 5:40 this evening, Governor Nathan Deal made his first sine die presentation to the House. As the General Assembly prepared to close this session, the governor referenced the special session only a few months away.
Now, I'm having so much fun doing this, I want to invite y'all to come back on about August the 15th, and we'll start all over again. I do think that the goodwill, hopefully, that we have generated during this session will carry us into that special session, which sometimes the subject matter there is not always as pleasant as it might otherwise be. But I do believe that every time that we get to know each other better, every time that we build a confidence and a trust in each other's judgment, in our character, and in our goodwill, it makes even the difficult issues that much more easy to be dealt with.
And the governor, of course, slated to make that ceremonial presentation in the Senate as well. At this hour, the House and Senate both in recess until 7:15. We'll check back in with that action on the General Assembly floor in just a little bit. Reporting live from the Capitol, I'm Nwandi Lawson for Primetime Lawmakers.
Hey, Nwandi, we'll get you and Tom Crawford back in just a few minutes for a little analysis of what's already happened and what could happen tonight, okay?
Absolutely.
Thanks very much. When Metro Atlanta counties finalized their transportation wish list last week, they ranged from new 285 interchanges to a regional rideshare program for the elderly with a total price tag of $29 billion. If voters agree to a 1-cent transportation tax in this year's referendum, the T-Plus is expected to generate between $7 and $8 billion over the next decade. That vote's actually coming in 2012. In tonight's leadership segment, Nwandi asked House Transportation Vice Chair Donna Sheldon how the region will balance those numbers and improve transportation infrastructure.
I think that's one of the things that's most important to remember right now is that they are working on an unconstrained list. So anything that you see right now is kind of the wish list. Where I guess, you know, the numbers aren't final, but we're looking at maybe $7 billion coming in to the Atlanta region over the next 10 years. And so but the unconstrained list is, I think last I heard was about $26 billion. So obviously there's not enough money to do everything on the list. And the other thing to remember is once the unconstrained list has been submitted to Todd Long, the Director of Planning, Todd Long will take that unconstrained list and match it against the criteria that the roundtable, the leaders in the region have approved. The criteria definitely will, deliverability be one of the main aspects of it, and also congestion mitigation, economic development, quality of life, those are things, and just performance measures. And we're looking for projects that we can deliver on time and on budget, or under budget would even be better, and that would definitely improve the quality of life and congestion challenges that we have here in Metro Atlanta.
Well, the idea of actually raising the motor fuel tax has been a part of the debate during certain sessions. Is that off the table now that this plan is coming into effect?
Well, and the great thing is that with the T-Splosh, we're all familiar with the T-Splosh on our local level. We've passed them successfully in counties across the state, and we're able to improve transportation projects within the boundaries of our county. Well, the great thing about the regional Splosh is actually you'll be able to improve regional connectivity. And just because you live in Gwinnett County doesn't necessarily mean you work in Gwinnett County. And so if you work in Fulton or DeKalb or Cobb County, we're looking for these funds will be able to improve those intersections along 85, 285, 400, just to help with the commute. But so those are the one thing that the voters definitely will see before they vote is a specific project list. Right now it's an unconstrained list, so that is not the list they'll be voting for. But by the time it goes to the filtering process, and then the roundtable will come back and they'll determine which projects will truly benefit the region.
Some of the mayors in the Fulton and DeKalb counties have expressed some concerns, though, because they're already contributing to the MARTA transportation system. What is it about this mechanism that will keep certain areas from being too overburdened with the costs for providing transportation?
Well, and I think that to me that's a great thing about the way we set up the plan in the House Bill 277 last year, because it's definitely based on regional input. The mayors and the commissioners in the region will make those decisions. We've got, and as long as they focus on regional benefit. I live in Gwinnett County, but if you fix 85 285 interchange, that's going to help the citizens of Gwinnett County. So, there will definitely be projects that will be within Gwinnett County, but just because it isn't maybe in Gwinnett County doesn't mean we would not benefit from it. So that's one thing that I hope that Fulton and DeKalb will continue to work on, is looking for those regional fixes, and and transit will be part of that. But I guess the biggest challenge with some of the transit projects is the deliverability issue. The projects have to be able to be delivered within the 10 years, and that's going to cause some challenges with some of the transit projects.
In what way do you think that would be challenging?
Well, we've not really done a lot on the transit, and just the cost. But I have no idea what Todd's going to approve or what the roundtable will come up with. But I know deliverability would be definitely one of the major aspects of it.
Well, certainly in the past there have been some debates that have pitted Metro Atlanta against other regions of the state in terms of transportation. What is it about this plan that kind of goes beyond what the previous ideas have?
Well, that's the great thing that we've seen from House Bill 277 is, I've spoken with Todd Long on several occasions and asking about the roundtables around the state. And he said, the one great thing is in the regions outside of Metro Atlanta, you have mayors and commissioners are coming together saying, we should have been doing this a long time ago, coming together and communicating and trying to work together to improve the area as opposed to just working within our boundaries.
Well, I'm sure voters will have a lot to digest over the next few months. Representative Donna Sheldon is the Majority Caucus Chair in the House, and she also is the Vice Chair of the House Transportation Committee. Thanks so much for joining us here on Primetime Lawmakers.
Thank you.
Representative Sheldon suggests that voters who want to learn more about Metro Atlanta transportation projects should visit online AtlantaRegionalRoundtable.com. After this short break, we'll be heading back to the Capitol with Nwandi and Tom Crawford, editor of the Georgia Report, to catch up with the goings-on of Day 40. We're headed towards Sine Die, so stay with us. Welcome back to Primetime Lawmakers. Tom Crawford, editor of the Georgia Report, has been with us all session for analysis and insight on issues ranging from the Hope Scholarship to light bulbs. Tonight on Day 40, he joins in Nwandi and I in the thick of it, live from the Capitol. Good evening. What's up, folks?
Well, you know, in the final hours here, we're usually talking budget. We're usually trying to wrangle out a conference committee report, but a little bit different this year, as immigration seems to be what's going to go down to the wire. Where does that bill stand right now?
The Senate voted just a while ago, 37-19, to pass the immigration bill. That happened after House and Senate members spent a lot of time today trying to work out a compromise version of the bill that both chambers would agree on, and I think they have. When the House gets back from their dinner break in a few minutes, they will take it up, and they are expected to pass it. So that will wind up being one of the most important and also one of the most controversial accomplishments of this session.
Hey, Tom, could I ask you a question about that? And Nwandi, this ping pong back and forth, I'm a little confused about this. This might be too deep in the weeds, but the House has to agree with the Senate going along with the House?
It would take us a half hour to explain it, Scott, okay. but basically they're at the point now where there aren't any more ping pongs. The House either votes to accept this compromise that the Senate has passed, or they don't have an immigration reform bill. That's the simplest way I can explain it. So, yeah, it's complicated, but we're down really into the weeds on it. It's either going to happen or it's not when the House votes.
And one of the things they did is decide who would get checked for their status and how big the companies would be, basically, right?
Right. The heart of the bill is really the E-Verify requirement for private employers, where they are required to check the citizenship or the residency status of their newly hired employees through the E-Verify system. The version they finally agreed upon will exempt businesses with, I believe, fewer than 10 full-time employees. A full-time employee is classified as someone who works at least 35 hours a week. And they put a loophole in there as well. If a business, for some reason, is found out that it's not complying with the E-Verify requirements of the law, they will be given a 30-day period to show that they have learned their lesson and are now in compliance with the law. And the enforcement of this particular provision, as I understand it, will be handled by the State Attorney General's office.
Okay, thanks
One
very much.
group that has been weighing in heavily in this debate has been the agriculture industry here in Georgia, and I understand that there is also a provision now to do some study within that bill as per what the impact might be of the legislation on ag.
That's right. The Department of Agriculture is mandated by the bill to conduct a study of the state's farms and agribusinesses and determine, I presume if they find that it's too much of a hardship on our farmers, that the legislators will come back and fix that part of the bill. That's a rather nebulous provision, to say the least, but I think they felt the duty to put it in there to try to assure the state's farming community.
You know, we're also hearing that the measure that will allow those tax fuel breaks for Delta is making its way through, expected to have final passage this evening. But there's a lot of other tax breaks still out there on the table.
Well, the Delta tax break is probably going to pass. I think it needs one more vote to reach final passage. The two chambers have agreed on a tax exemption for Gulfstream Aerospace, which builds airplanes down in Savannah. And this would give them a tax exemption worth $8 million or so a year on the aircraft parts that they buy. They amended that bill to also include a pretty lucrative tax break for developers who build tourist attractions. My understanding is there is a proposal to build a large tourist attraction in Camden County down on the Georgia coast. They would get back a portion of the sales tax proceeds in return for agreeing to build this tourist attraction. That bill has passed. It's going to Governor Nathan Deal, and according to Representative Ron Stevens, the governor has indicated he will sign it.
Interesting turns at this time.
And Tom, an interesting sidelight on the whole tax break situation, and listening to the debate earlier this evening, in fact, this might be the biggest thing this General Assembly did for jobs, if I'm reading that right, since tax reform's been postponed.
Well, that's true, Scott, and they have been discussing these tax reform bills in the context of being job generators, which we certainly hope they will be. Certainly, if a tax break results in a large development project that's going to require a lot of construction workers, then yes, that definitely could have a jobs impact.
Well, you know, speaking of jobs, we have heard during the budget process that the money that had to be borrowed from the federal government to cover the unemployment trust deficit was big out there. But we also have heard that there needs to be some legislation passed in order to extend those jobless benefits to many Georgians.
That's right. And this is another one of those technical issues that often crops up in the closing hours of the session. But basically, the General Assembly needs to make a very minor amendment in the state's unemployment insurance laws so that the state could qualify for $175 million in federal funds to extend unemployment insurance benefits, which are due to run out, I believe, in July, for long-term unemployed people. I believe it would give them another 20 or 22 weeks of unemployment. Again, this is for people who've been out of work a long time and can't find a job. So far, the proponents of this have not been able to find a bill to attach it to, and there hasn't been a lot of overt support from it from either the governor's office or the labor commissioners, so there's still a lot of doubt as to whether this will happen or not.
You know, Tom, there was also a discussion about whether some more sweeping ethics reform might be able to tack its way onto some legislation that was going through. How did ethics fare this session?
Well, they needed to make a small fix in the law to plug a loophole that would allow lobbyists not to report the money they spend on legislative aids. I believe that amendment was added to a related bill. It has passed one chamber. I think it's going to pass the other at some point tonight, unless I'm badly mistaken. So probably that small but very needed change in the ethics laws will be made.
You know, it's interesting. We hear the chamber is coming back in session right now, and one matter that keeps resurfacing is exactly what's going on over on the Senate side as far as leadership issues are concerned.
This is a dispute that's been going on all session between Casey Cagle and the senators who are aligned with him, and Senate President Pro Tem Tommy Williams and Majority Leader Chip Rogers. A lot of disputes, a lot of discussions, a lot of angry talk between the two sides has been going on. They caucused for several hours yesterday. They've caucused for a long time today. I do not know at this point if they've worked out a compromise or not. Maybe they don't have much time, although there is a special session coming up this summer, and maybe they can get it worked out by then. But this is something that has taken up a lot of time and attention of the senators during this session.
And probably had some impact on some of the legislation that they were pushing. I know in the case of Senate Majority Leader Chip Rogers, he's had some of his education initiatives squelched.
That's true. He has tried several times to get legislation through that would allow charter school students, for example, to compete on athletic teams at regular high schools, has been unable to get it in. And you might say because his attention's been diverted so much by this leadership struggle, that might have been a factor in it.
All right. Well, Tom Crawford, thanks so much for your insights. We'll check back in with you as the session continues to roll on down to the end.
Hey, and the end is almost here.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you guys have it over-under on the hour of sine die, the hour of adjournment this evening? I'm picking 9 p.m. What do you think?
9 p.m. would be nice, but 12 midnight wouldn't surprise me either.
All right, we'll be here to watch it happen. Thanks. We'll get back to you. Coming up tomorrow, a very special legislative wrap-up edition of Primetime Politics. I'll be joined by leading Capitol journalists and commentators for an in-depth overview of the legislative session. Be sure and tune into a special live Primetime Politics tomorrow night at 7 here on GPB. Primetime Lawmakers will be back this evening at 11 for a live Sine Die show. We'll bring you live reports from Nwandi Lawson to the Capitol. I'll be joined in studio by legislative experts Buddy Darden and Bill Crane for analysis. Special Sine Die edition of Primetime Lawmakers at 11 tonight. Coming up next, GPB continues programming to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the Civil War. Another installment of the GPB original production, Georgia's Civil War, is next. And that's our broadcast for this 40th Legislative Day of the 2011 session. And Nwandi and I will join you again at 11 for a special Sine Die broadcast. We'll see you then. Until then, have a good evening.
On its position.
This is a GPB original production.